Bam, bam, Gee, Mac, this mini is so fast. You know it's good, but welcome back to another HRE Uncut. Yeah, caught me. Alright, what are we doing? So we're in the red race mini, and this is moved on a little bit since you would have seen it on our last video. So we got this new gear linkage set up all in here for the customer. We built the remote linkage housing. You've seen that on one of the videos, and this is what it looks like now mounted in the car. So I built this standoff box for it, somewhat of a replica of the NDAF owns version. I did some modifications that made it the way I want. So originally the gear linkage would have come up through the floor here, and the gear lever would have been down there, and we've raised the whole linkage up, solid mounted it, and put it up here in this really nice position. So when the driver is driving the car, the gear lever is right beside his hand. That would put him in third, fourth gear, real nice and close. We're going to build him a dummy pedal here for his clutch foot to sit on. That'll be one of the next projects. This car hasn't moved on other than that massively physically, because most of the work this month on this car has been in the engine shop. You would have seen one of the videos of us stripping down the short motor of this engine in the main shop, and we also got the cylinder head done for it, and we've started stripping the gearbox for it. So this is well on its way, but physically it has a bit more to go. Some of the stuff that has to happen, of course, is the anti-roll bar has to go in the back. The steel just arrived to make those, so we can get that done hopefully in the next couple of days. Shock absorbers have to be changed. There's Bud calling in to say hello. So next on the hit parade, I think, is going to be the Clubman Estate. So let's go have a look at that and see what progress we made there. Okay, so we've making really good progress on this Clubman Estate. We have made one or two videos of the work we've done, but we've also done some work behind the scenes as well. So you've seen that we got the coilover suspension fitted. I have also, in the meantime, stripped down the anti-roll bar arms and links for them to get repaired. I'll bring you over and show you that now. We also got the heated windscreen fitted, which you've seen that happening, and wired up. I've also done the engine work, so I have the water pump replaced. I have the new fan belt, you hear me? I have the new fan belt in place, and the water system pressure tested and back working good. So some good progress being made here. I'm just going to show you the anti-roll bar link now and what we need to do to that. So I have one here, I'll just whip it off and show you. So this is the anti-roll bar link, and it might have been hard to make out in the last video, but what had happened was when it was fitted the last time before it came to me, someone had actually bored a hole through this blade and had fitted the anti-roll bar link here, which obviously massively affects how the anti-roll bar link can, or well, how the anti-roll bar works, and it affects its functionality. So what has to happen here is I need to weld up this anti-roll bar, the hole here, and grind it back flush and repaint this arm. You can see the powder coat is flaking off, so we're going to give it a fresh coat of good quality 2-pack paint, and then that'll be fine. Then we can refit that to the car, and that'll be the anti-roll bar setup done. I've also started on the braking system, so I've run all new copper lines underneath the car. You're not going to be able to see them, but I've run a brand new fresh copper pipe up from the brake master cylinder because there was a leak in that, and there was a proportioning valve that shouldn't have been there. So I've removed that, put a T-piece in, and that is ready to rock and roll. So all we've left to do on the braking system here is change the pads and the discs, and then the rear end of this car is going to be buttoned up and done. Moving on, we've made really good positive progress this month on the Reily. So the last video you seen, I was very nervous about this front end, and I'm actually chuffed to tell you that I have it pretty much back together and the way I want it. So I got the wings on, got the wings installed, then I got this front end put in, then I cut out the space for the Reily front to go in. I have that spot welded in across here. There is still some metal work to do. Just some fine fettling to get this steel edge looking much sharper and much straighter. It's kind of rolled over looking at the moment, but I need to just get in here with the hammers and dollies and square that edge out in line with the bonnet. So I need to fit the bonnet, get that line, and then the front of the car is going to look really, really well. Some welding obviously to be done, needs to do some seam welding on it, but pretty much I'm very happy. I have the shape, I've put the lights into the apertures and they all sit in there nice and neat. Headlamps the same. Bonnet fitting really nice. I've lovely gaps on the bonnet, so I'm chuffed with how that has worked. If you swing around here, I'm going to show you the door. So on the other video, you would have seen us fitting this A panel and door, and there was some fettling left to do. So you can see here that I've started building up weld here on the door skin to take out that big gap that was there. Obviously a bit of grinding and sheet metal work to do there, but the door is now starting to fit really, really well. So I'm chuffed over that. Over here at the A panel, I did a bit of welding here as well. So there was a kind of an awful flat spot here where that line should have made up. So just a small bit of grinding to do there, and then that's going to be in. A panel is now fitted to the wing and the door is in properly. So the Reily is really coming on well. Another maybe week or two of metal work to do on it, and then it'll be ready to go out to get paint, and we'll be delighted to see that go get its paint, make a bit of space here in the shop, and we've another project waiting up in the yard to come in, so you'll have to keep it tuning in. Let's go in the engine bay now and see what's happening there. Okay, so you can see that the engine bay is in a bit of a mess, and that's because we actually just finished filming another video for you all about how we've stripped down the engine in the Rosengart. So over here in the bench is actually some of the parts of the Rosengart, and I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes look at some of the stuff that isn't shown in the engine strip down. How pretty are these? These are the pistons from the Rosengart. This is the camshaft. Have a look at these big end bearings. These are the epitome of hand machine engineering. What you'll see is that these are white metal bearings that have been poured in place and then line bored and honed, and then hand crafted the oil ways into the bearing. So you can see how in here in the bearing you can see these grooves have literally been handcrafted in there, right? They're poured white metal bearings. These pistons are pretty cool as well. Have a look at the pistons. So you've got three cast iron rings up here on the pistons, and then a final fourth ring down here for oil control. The conrods themselves, in fact, are actually pretty cool. You can see they have a pinch bolt up here. Try and get you a bit extra light on that. So you see they have a pinch bolt on here holding the wrist pin in here. One of the things we found really cool about this engine is pretty much all of the bolts are handmade for it. I'm going to just show you one of them here. So you can see a detail here. If I can get I'll just get my little screwdriver and show you. So if you see the tip of this bolt, you can see there's like a little small bit of a metal pin sticking up out of the top of the bolt. That is where it was parted off in the lathe. So these bolts were handmade, literally handmade, each bolt on a lathe. The thread would have been turned first from a piece of hex stock, and then they would have parted it off. They would have turned the OD again, put a thread on it, and then parted it off. So each individual bolt would have been handmade by somebody on a lathe, probably like our 1930s Colchester that's sitting up above that we did our line boring on. So that's the kind of psyche that I get into when I look at this engine. Some of the other kind of really cool things, there's the front bolt that holds the front flywheel on, and you'll notice this kind of unusual design. That design, lads, is because it was a hand crank start engine. It had a starter motor all right, but it could be started by hand. So you put a shaft in here which had two pins, and when you cranked the engine over by the shaft, it turned it around, and then when the engine started, it kept rotating and the shaft stopped and pushed it out. So that's a really cool piece of engineering. Again, this would have been handmade. You can see where the live center and the lathe would have been when they would have turned this OD and then put a thread on it. And more than likely it was turned from a piece of big hex stock. So this is 34mm hex stock. So they probably would have turned it from that. Really kind of cool. The crankshaft is an unusual piece of kit. Look at the crankshaft. It is a 2-bearing crankshaft. It has a taper roller bearing at one end, down the flywheel end. A taper roller bearing sits there, and then it has a deep groove, a double ball bearing, deep groove ball bearing. So you've got one set of ball bearings there, one set the other end, and that's at that end of the crankshaft, and would have run there. And then obviously your pistons and rods for 3 and 4 ran here in the middle. One of the things to note about this crank, lads, is absolutely no counterbalancing. No counterbalance on the crank. If you compare that to a mini crank which has loads of counterbalancing on it, why could they get away in these old engines without counterweights? Quite simply because of the RPM limits. These motors, they pretty much had very little balancing done on them, and they typically only rev to about 1,500, or maybe if you really pushed them you might get 2,000 revs out of them. So that's a really interesting kind of hark back to the early technology when people building piston engines were really finding their feet. This guy Rosengart was an absolutely incredible engineer. Some of the stuff he did was really brilliant. Just looking over here at the short motor. So we have this short motor pulled down, and in the video you'll get to see how we've done that, how we got the short motor to here. But one of the things I want to show you is the valve train. So I'm just going to move this into the light for you so you'll be able to see. So it is what they call a side valve engine. So if we kind of, I'll just see if I can turn this engine stand a little bit for you to show you that. I'll be able to get a better look at it. So these are the bores for the pistons. The pistons would have ran up and down in these bores here. And at the side of it was the inlet and exhaust valve. So there's each cylinder. You've got an exhaust valve, an inlet, an exhaust valve, an inlet, and an exhaust valve. So really kind of cool how this motor worked. But really interesting engineering here is that it has a cast iron engine block that then fitted onto an aluminium sump which had the crank in it. Really interesting. If you have a look in a day or two's time, I think Wednesday, the strip down of this will be being released, and that's really interesting. We go and take this whole thing apart. I've never stripped one of these engines before, and I did it all on camera for you guys to have a look at, so you could join me as I learned how to take this engine apart and see what was inside it. Other than that, lads, I don't have much more to show you in the shop. It's been a weird month, being the January month, and shipping has been really hard to get stuff over and back, so projects have been moving probably a little slower than I'd like them. Next month we do have some really interesting stuff going. We're going to do loads more work on that race car. Hopefully you're keeping up to date with Gretel. We have a frame to build for that on the weekends. We're going to try and build a dolly to get that up into, and start stripping the last parts of her chassis. So that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks this month. We're going to button up that Clubman Estate, and as I said, I have another little project that just arrived last week. A really nice Irish car belonging to another local mini enthusiast that needs a little bit of fettling done, so I'll get to show you that and hopefully do a few videos about that. After that, guys, there's not a lot more for me to say other than I really appreciate how much the channel has grown in the last month. It is unbelievable. Your support has been phenomenal, and it is really encouraging me to get out here in the shop and make more videos. We're trying our best to make the videos as interesting as we can and make them as focused on what you guys really want. But what I will say, lads, is this is a community. You are here with me in the shop, and your help in the comments section really focuses me to know what it is you want to see doing. I'm doing tons of projects in here all the time, and we have to try and pick which of those we're going to film for you on a weekly basis. So you guys give us comments down below and tell us what you want to see. We'll do that. We'll focus on those particular things and try and get you more on that. I know people are asking me to show you more stuff about the race car. The race car's in storage at the moment to try and allow me get through some projects here in the shop, and as soon as the race car comes back, I am going to show you all about the front suspension and how that's done. So that is going to come in a few weeks time, but you got to buy me a bit of time because the weather here in Ireland is very inclement. We're in the middle of February, well, we're at the start of February, should I say. So the weather's inclement, and I don't like leaving cars outside, so I put the GT in storage just for a little bit. Other than that, guys, I'm sorry I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but that's kind of part of HRE Uncut. Let's finish it up. Don't forget, guys, if you like the channel, you're enjoying what you see, to give us a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, you're all very, very welcome. It's great to have you along, and I hope you're enjoying being here in the workshop with me. If you are, hit a subscribe there, and then that'll give you notifications as we release each new video. And it does really help the channel as well when you subscribe. So thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.